Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Conscious Grief Series 5. And today I am joined by Olivia Bareham, who is a certified death midwife, a home funeral guide, celebrant, and founder of Sacred Crossings Institute and Sacred Crossings Alternative Funeral Home in Los Angeles. She has been guiding individuals and their families through a conscious, peaceful transition for the past 15 years and now offers certificate training programs for the death doula and death midwife. So welcome back, Olivia.
Thank you so much, Tara. It's lovely to be with you again.
Yes, it's so lovely to be with you as well. And we met when I was living in LA, and Olivia is a fellow Brit, but home is in Los Angeles. And this is such fascinating work that you do, Olivia. But how did you come to start doing this work? Perhaps we can begin there.
Well, I guess I would say that my ministry, I was ordained as a minister in the 80s, was based on hands-on healing in the beginning. And I did that for a while, and then I got distracted by life. And then when Mum died, or she was in her dying process, I went back to England to take care of her. And that's when I was invited into preparing the body after death. The hospice nurse asked me to do that. And I had this visceral experience of something that I couldn't have imagined before. Like who would want to hold their dead mother while she was bathed and prepared and laid out for death? Like, to think about it was not something that you would welcome. But when I was invited to do it in the moment, it felt like the most natural thing to do. So of course I said, yes, please. And the nurse helped me through this process of preparing Mother's body. And that's when I knew that it was giving me the opportunity to feel something so deeply. Basically, it was the love and gratitude that now Mum's dead. I get to really feel something that even during her life, and we were very close towards the end, I still wasn't able to access that, because life and its busyness keeps you distracted. But when there's nothing but the body left, it's very raw, you're very open, and there's an opportunity to go very deep. So that was really the beginning for me. I knew this was something to explore and investigate and see if I could help other families have this opportunity to be with their dead and begin to integrate loss on a whole other level.
It's quite profound because, one of the reasons that we have become very disassociated from death is because, back in the olden days, everybody would have had their family or friends, and as you did with your mother, attended to the body in the home. And then the funeral homes came along and we became very detached from death, as well as, hospitalization, and death has become a scary thing, that we fear. And actually, as you explained, it was not a scary thing that you experienced with your mother. And how, maybe you could explain to the people who are listening how being with the body helps the grieving process.
Well, to begin with, just the fact that the body is not taken away. So the heart stops beating, they stop breathing, death has occurred, this monumentous event in your life has happened. And rather than it be a frantic event of, bagging the body and sending it away and letting someone else deal with it, so now you're left with a sort of a void and question marks, and there's a perplexing longing that occurs when that happens. But when you're just left in the room alone with the body, it gives your brain, I think, an opportunity to make this adjustment and settle in with the reality of, wow, what just happened? Their heart stopped beating, they stopped breathing, the body is still here. Where are they? And that's when you begin to have this experience of they're here. They're still here. It's extraordinary. It's a mystery. None of us really can fully understand it. But when you're in it, when you're in that liminal space with the essence of your loved one that's no longer attached to this physical body, you begin to have a deeper understanding on many levels. So the fear that was there before it happened, because fear is anticipating something that hasn't happened yet, that just dissolves and it disappears. And then you're left with what is, which is beauty. It's this incredible vessel. And you're left with the wonder of your own physical vessel. This is an incredibly magical, beautiful thing that we are walking around in, and we take it so much for granted. And it's not until it stops moving that you can perceive it and feel it on other levels.
Mm. And so when you do home vigils and funerals, how do they differ from the traditional funerals that most of us are accustomed to?
Well, when somebody dies, traditionally, the funeral home is called. They take the body, they put it in a body bag, they take it to the funeral home, they embalm the body, they dress it for you, then they lay it out and invite you to the funeral parlor to spend some time visiting. And then when the paperwork is ready, you can either rent their chapel to have people come. The body is laid out. It's all very it's very purposeful. It's very well managed. There's time constraints, obviously. It's very orderly and nice and proper. And at home, the difference is the person dies at home. Whoever's there, the family members gather around. You can take as long as you need before you even begin the process of preparing the body, which is a big part of that's a big part of the home funeral, preparing the body and laying it out. And it becomes a family community affair. Where should we put them? How should we dress the table? Are they going to wear clothing? Are they going to wear a shroud? And it's very DIY, very organic. Everybody has their say. So, and I try to stay out of it, as you know, where the Sacred Crossings is the funeral home, but I'm just there to give them permission to have this experience. But I'm encouraging them all the time. You do it. You know how to wash them. You've been washing them for the last 6 months while they've been laying here. Oh, really? Okay. And I'd like to give him his last shave. And I think she would like to wear this dress. So it just unravels very slowly, takes hours to do this properly and beautifully. And then the body lays there for 1, 2, 3 days, however long the family needs. And then it just stays in the living room when people arrive for the funeral service. So it doesn't have to go anywhere, although we can take it to a bigger venue or a church if that's what they want on the third day. More often than not, though, the ceremony takes place in the house. And I mean, even if it's a small apartment, you can get 20 people in there comfortably. And so it's very personal because it becomes really an extension of the person's life right there in the house. The food that's cooked is their favorite food. The stories are telling in the living room while they might be laying in the bedroom for their days in honor. It's very different. I mean, it's 380 degrees different, actually.
Yeah, and the thing that's springing to my mind is like the amount of time that you have. And it gives our psyche that time to grasp what has happened and to say all the things that we want to say and have many conversations and talk about and honor the person who has passed away. And that, again, is something that assists the grieving process. And, you know, from obviously we've all been through the pandemic and how so many people were even stripped of having a funeral, and how that has affected their grieving process, because we need these rituals. And I think we're coming back to the creativity of how we can have ritual in our life, that it doesn't have to be the prescribed ways of how we have been doing things. And that's what you're doing, you know, going against something that's been in place. Like you say, it's very sort of prescribed, and this is how it is. And there's not an awful lot of sense of control, and certainly limited creativity. And that's the space you're providing for people.
Exactly. I say that I'm trying to uplift, inspire, and empower. That's the goal of Sacred Crossings. So when you're with the body, it's not this terrible, sad, tragic thing. It's like, oh, it's more of a, wow, she looks so good. So there's a feeling of upliftment rather than terrible sorrow. And then they're inspired to be creative. How can we make this really special, just like he would have wanted? So it's imaginative, it's creative, it's inspirational, and it's empowering. I tell the family, you know exactly how to do this. Trust yourself. He's your beloved. You're the best person in the world to do this, to take care of them. And that gives them a feeling of empowerment. Yes, I do know how to do this. Thank you. I didn't realize that I did before, because I thought somebody who knew best was the person to do it. So, yeah, on every level.
And the other thing, as you're speaking, it's a community of people, as you know, on many occasions, who are, you know, creating the home funeral. And that in itself is a really beautiful thing, you know, that families are coming together and making these decisions and holding the space for the grief. And that must be a wonderful thing to witness, you know, for yourself in your work.
It is. Yeah, and it's one of the first questions I ask when a family says that they would like a home funeral. We have the first meeting, and I said, bring everybody who's going to be involved. Is it the next door neighbor, your children, their spouses? And we have this lovely meeting where all of their questions and all of their concerns are put in the middle, and we unravel them. I help put their mind at ease that you've got this, and then help them create this sacred container where the immediate family who are experiencing the greatest loss are in the center, along with the decedent, the one who's going to die. And everybody else is creating this container of safety so that they can do this and carry their loved one all the way to the crematory or the grave. It's like you're closing the book of somebody's life, and that this very last piece, the last 2 or 3 pages of the book, remember, are the most important. This is the conclusion, and how you die is the final gift. It's like, oh, it was so beautiful. You want somebody to feel that way when somebody they love very much has died. You want them to close that book.
I love the way that you've explained that. And you've you have now developed a certification. So all the experience that you now teach to other people as well, which is inspiring them and educating people that you can do things a different way. So maybe you'd like to just share with the listeners how your courses work.
Sure. Well, the Death Doula training program is 2 levels. And even though this title is sort of changing as it evolves, it's really only been a thing for the last like 5-6 years as a very popular thing. But a death doula is one who escorts individuals and holds their families through the dying journey. And it's normally up until the last breath. So it's everything that needs to be taken care of. Putting your things in order, completing your directives, saying your goodbyes, managing, finding the right time to go on hospice, and then that care right up until the last breath. I think that's the death doula, and everybody needs the support in that journey, whether they call themselves a death doula or just a family member who's doing that. So the certification course is for that piece of it. And then levels 3 and 4, I call them the death midwifery piece. So even though I think death midwifery is the whole umbrella of from the final diagnosis through the dying journey, and then the vigil, the preparation of the body, the vigil and the burial or the cremation and the services that are included. I think the whole umbrella is death midwifery. So in order to get a certificate for death midwifery, you need to do levels 1 and 2, which is the doula, and 3 and 4, which is after the last breath, everything that's involved in caring for a loved one at home. We use dry ice preservation here in the States. And I basically tell them everything that I've learned over the last 15 years helping hundreds of families to do this. And then level 4 is the life celebration. How do we create a service that encapsulates this person's life, and how do we identify what their unique thread was in the tapestry of life? So we're honoring them, we're remembering them, we're saying goodbye in this ceremony, and we're celebrating. They made it. They got to the last breath, and whatever that is, even if it's a child who only lives 7 years, or a 98-year-old grandma, that it needs a service and a celebration that they were here, that they shared, that their love affected humanity. So that's level 4. And so if you do all 4 courses, you'll get a certificate as for death doula and 1 for death midwifery.
Mm.
And I offer them both in person and via Zoom. They transferred very nicely over the Zoom format, so a lot of people are choosing to take it that way. Okay,
that's great to know, because obviously people will be listening from other countries. And I was, curious if you might want to share anything that you have seen at a celebration of life that's stuck out for you, or something that might inspire the people listening.
Well, the celebration of life that I love is the living funeral. It's actually when the person who's dying chooses to have their celebration before they die. And it's becoming a little bit more popular now. The tricky thing is catching the right time to do it, because when somebody, as they progress in their dying journey, they can get to a point where they're so weakened that they couldn't even enjoy a celebration like that. So I've learned that the trick is to find that sweet spot when they're still healthy enough to participate and listen to what everybody got to say about them. it's a great opportunity to sort of fill yourself up with love and gratitude, and like it's like a pat on the back, like, you know what, I did affect people. My life did matter. I counted. Even if the woman is like maybe 35 and she's dying younger and she has small children, her being present to what the family and friends are saying is helpful, not only for her but the family who are sitting there. They're hearing from people in the community stories that they would not necessarily have heard, and far better to listen to it yourself than be in a box at an altar while all these lovely things are being said. So those are becoming my favorite. But I've seen some extraordinary celebrations with the body, which is a funeral service, and also a memorial service without the body. I love how people choose the location to reflect the person's life, in a park, or I just did one last week in a park. It was stunningly beautiful. And very often we take a dove to represent the soul of the one who's left, and that dove is held throughout the service. And at the very end, for the final, we do little number of different rituals to mark the final conclusion, and then the dove is released. It's always a beautiful and tender moment, as just people just watch this bird fly into the sky to beautiful music, and then turn away and go to their car. And I've heard, almost everybody says that it was very moving to know that they have flown and now they can move on with their lives. So there's a lot of different rituals. I don't know. Those are two of my favorites, though.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting because my mother had started to plan a party like that. And as you say, unfortunately, she died before the party, talking about the timing, because she was obviously hoping that she would still be there. And I think she had insured it against that. But yeah, it's interesting that over 20 years ago, she had that idea to have her own party before she died, but sadly she didn't. She didn't make it. But something that is quite interesting, that's a more recent development in your work, and this is a progression since I left LA, because I did 2 of your trainings, and I remember we were shown a video about medical assisted dying. And I remember very clearly watching that it was in Belgium, and the lady who went through the process. And now it's legal in Canada and in California. And you are, working with people who are choosing this method of dying. So I'm very interested to hear about that.
It's a big subject. Yes, it's becoming much more popular quite quickly, actually. It's available now, I think, in 11 states in the US. California is one of them. And the rules are you have to have a diagnosis of death within 6 months. You don't have to be on hospice, but your primary physician would have given you that diagnosis. And then after, you have to make a verbal request that you would like to end your life with these lethal medications. And the doctor assesses you for your mental ability to make these decisions capably. And you have to be able to drink. In California, you have to drink it. In Canada, the doctor can euthanize you with a lethal injection, but in the US, still, you have to do it yourself. And then you have to get another doctor within 48 hours to agree with the first doctor. And then you put it in writing, and then you can get the medication. And they either send it to your pharmacy or to your home. A lot of people are choosing that because they are fearful that their pain and suffering will be more than they can bear. So this medication is sitting in the refrigerator in case they need it. But many people have it in the refrigerator and end up not taking it. And a lot do take it. And then they set the date of their death. I want to do it next Tuesday. These are the people who I'd like to have gathered around me. So my role then becomes how to make this sacred, how to create a container where this event happens, because it's quite intense for everybody who's present, in a way that it is gentle, affirming, honoring, and memorable, in a way that when people leave the room, you walk into the room and your loved one's sitting on the bed and chatting away, and they ate breakfast and they had a night's sleep, and in 20 minutes they're going to be dead. It's a lot for the human psyche to process. So I'm working on creating ways to make that holy ground one that will soothe and soften all those people who leave the room afterwards. And it's becoming quite popular.
Yeah, wow, Olivia, it's very, very, very deep and powerful work and important work, to have that sacred container in a situation like that. Obviously, here in the UK, we're not at that stage yet. And it's interesting also to hear, a bit like my mother's celebration and those celebrations, like some people have it, but then they don't use it because I guess they pass away and the pain, didn't get to that point for them.
Yeah, I think, but although it's different in your mum's case, because she was trying to create a celebration, a party, and in this case, they're trying to end their life. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that we really address this issue of fear, because this is basically why most people are choosing it. They're afraid. They don't want to experience what they perceive as being unbearable suffering. But if we remember that, fear is something that we know nothing about the feared thing because it hasn't happened yet. We listen to projections of what it might be, but it's still an unknown. And I'm wondering if by ending our lives sooner, that we're missing perhaps an opportunity to experience something that we couldn't have imagined. And that's why I think these long conversations at the bedside with somebody who's decided that they've had enough, they want out of here, I think those conversations are very important, and we need to be spending more time on unraveling that conversation and having skilled practitioners, doulas, learn how to ask those questions and be with the fear in the room until it possibly changes. Not always, but I definitely think a life is worth a lot of conversations at the end when it comes to choosing to end it. So
yeah, quite right. And it's this, the conversation around death and dying is not always one that people are at all comfortable with. Whether you're, even if you're in perfect health, and these are conversations that people need to become more comfortable with, because as we all know, that this is going to happen at some stage in our lives. Why do you think people are so afraid of talking about death?
Oh, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think the way we language it is a big reason. We say that death is a failure. We fought the battle and we lost, and these inherited notions, and because we're not present to it, it's been taken out of our culture. We don't see death. Everybody's afraid of a dead body. We just got television and a movie idea of it, which is nothing like the real thing. I think that's a big reason too, that people are terrified really of the unknown. So if we make it more known, that fear will definitely diminish. That's a big part of it. So I'm trying to do that by getting people familiar with being present to a dead body, touching a dead body, washing it, bathing it, anointing it, dressing it. When you've done that 3 times, and everybody has 3 loved ones who die before they do, when your time comes, you're familiar with it. You go, oh, okay, this is not an unknown, scary thing. This is something I've seen and been present to and participated in at least 3 times. I think everybody should take the training and should have death education. We should have this in high school so that people are more comfortable in their teens of just discussing it as a normal thing. This is not, we're not talking about, roadkill and goth and sort of spooky, scary stuff, but the real thing, which is the stillness, which is when the body stops. That's what it is. It's like watching it stop, like watching a car no longer start. Until it's that familiar, we're going to try to avoid it at all costs and prolong life, which is really, in most cases, I've witnessed prolonging death. And who really wants to prolong a death? And you don't really think about these things until somebody sort of nails you on the question. And then you leave the person with really pondering, what am I doing here? I'm prolonging my dying.
Yeah. It's a really interesting and pertinent question for us all to think about. And again, a lot of it is the fear. Again, I mean, a lot of it boils down to fear, actually. Because this is the Conscious Grief series, I always like to ask speakers, how you would define conscious grief, just your own interpretation.
I think for me, and I've recently been through a very a traumatic experience which sort of flung me into what I now unraveling as grief. Even at the time, it just felt like trauma. But personally, I think conscious grief is the capacity and the ability to feel it. And that, even though that sounds like, well, I'm feeling it, I've been like grieving the loss of my loved one. And sometimes I question, are you really actually feeling it? Or are you still in the knowing that they died and there's a story about it? So I think conscious grief is being willing to put so much space around it and be so fully present to it that you're having a deeper feeling experience and you're not running the story about it. And that's a skill and takes a skillful loved one, partner, professional to be able to hold you while you go a little bit deeper, while you stop the story and go into the feeling. It's the feeling that's terrifying, because to really feel the feeling, you are so helpless. It's such an unknown. It's like being in a washing machine. It's just having its way with you and being willing to really let it have its way with you till you feel like you're going sort of mad. That's, to me, is conscious grief, because there's an end to it. It ebbs and it flows. And if you're willing to go all the way down, when it takes you all the way down, then you will come back up, and each wave is slightly different. And then it becomes sort of like a very curious experience of, my gosh, that's, here we go again. I'm feeling it again. I don't think I can go out today, but I don't feel sorry for myself. I'm not moaning and whining. I'm just in another layer of this feeling of loss. It's so deep and also very precious, because it's rare to have the opportunity to feel that deeply. But I'm so glad I did now. And I'm so glad that I had a supportive group of friends who just made sure that I was never alone and didn't try to stop me from falling into the washing machine of those feelings, which grief are. They're all the feelings, aren't they? Anger, shock, fear, dread, anxiety. It's all in there together. So you can't really talk about it because it doesn't have words, all of that. It's just an invitation to feel and be changed and cleaned. Interesting. I used the washing machine. I never thought of that before, but that is what's happening. You're actually being washed clean of something if you let yourself be in the washing machine. Don't sit on top of it. Don't be the one to push the buttons and stop it and start it. And it takes courage. It takes time, and it takes a group of people to build you a container to do it.
Really beautifully said, Olivia. Yeah. I like that analogy of the washing machine, and yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, but as you said, you're sort of being cleaned and somehow transformed,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's life. Life is not really easy.
Definitely not.
It's a tricky place. So I just mean, bring it on. If that's what I'm to feel next, if that's what God brought me, then I'll feel it. I wouldn't have gone and chosen it, but now it's here. Don't let me escape it. Don't let me miss this opportunity to be human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I know you have an invitation for people who might be interested in your work. So perhaps you could explain that.
Yes, well, I'd like to offer a free consultation for anyone who's interested in learning more about how to have a home funeral, how they can help somebody through traumatic loss. In the funeral home, we're dealing more and more with sudden loss. And when you get that news that somebody you love has died tragically, you're suddenly thrown, and it's helpful to have a few tools. So if you'd like to have a consultation, please email me at olivia@sacredcrossings.com, and we can set aside a time where I can help answer any of your questions. And also, I'd like to offer you the Death Care Directive, which can be found at deathcaredirective.com. And this is an online booklet where you can write down all of your wishes for after you've taken your last breath. What would you like to happen next? Who's there? Do you want a home funeral? Would you like a shroud? Would you like somebody to close your chakras? Would you like frankincense oil? What flowers? And then there's an opportunity to write down your passwords for all of your social media things, your obituary, your burial, everything. And then when you've done it, and even if you're 28 right now and you're looking forward to 60 more years, having that document in a file called your death file is a really good idea. because surprisingly, many of us do die unexpectedly. And then your loved ones will just be able to go and pull out this little booklet, or you've sent it to them online, and they know exactly how to honor you. So I'd like to offer that to people too.
Yeah, really wonderful. And that is conscious dying, isn't it?
Yeah, a
Yeah,
part of it. Yes.
it is.
Putting things in order and consciously telling people what it is you want afterwards is, yeah, conscious dying. And it helps you have that conversation. And then it helps your loved ones also step into the conversation. And really, you want a deep sea burial? Oh my God, does that mean we got to go out to sea with your shroud? Yes. You know, keep it light, keep it fun.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Olivia. Is there anything else you would like to share before we complete our conversation?
No, I think you've said it all, Tara. I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and for spreading the word. And just invite people to go to sacredcrossings.com. If you live in Los Angeles, we'd be happy to help you with funeral services. And I look forward to seeing you at a workshop
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, and I can thoroughly recommend Olivia's workshops. So it's so good to see you again, Olivia, and thank you very, very much for being here and for everything that you do. And thank you
you.
to everybody who's been watching. Bye.